Welcome to the DeKalb County CEO debate presented by DeKalb County Democratic Committee. My name is Steve Parker. I'm the Special Events Chair for DeKalb Dems. We are so pleased to bring you our fourth Meet the Candidate program for opposed DeKalb County candidates running in the May 21st election for the office of CEO. Tonight, we spotlight those running for CEO. Due to term limits, DeKalb will elect a brand new CEO this May. 3 of the former DeKalb commissioners are running for this seat, and we are delighted that all 3 are with us tonight. We will hear from each of the candidates and what they have to say about issues that are important to voters in 5 categories: ethics in government, economic development, infrastructure, housing, and character. We hope to be able to take a few questions from the audience. Audience, please put your questions in the Q&A rather than in chat. We hope to get to your questions, but if we do not, we will provide you with the candidate's email address so that you can reach out to them directly. Following this debate, we will be making a special announcement about our Blue Ballot fundraising event coming up next month. Please stay with us for that announcement. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Brandy Weish, Chair of the DeKalb County Democratic Committee. Brandy.
Thank you so much, Steve. I want to start off tonight by thanking Steve and all of the team who has worked tirelessly to bring this event and all of our forums together. I'd also like to thank our commissioners, Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, Larry Johnson, and Steve Bradshaw for being here with us this evening. We are very excited about tonight's forum. As you all have heard me say, if you have been on any of our forums so far this year, you have heard me talk about the importance of our local elections here in DeKalb County. In a presidential year, I know it is easy to focus on what is happening at the federal level, but it is so crucially important to pay attention to what is happening right here in our own county, and specifically with the race that we're going to be having our candidates here talking about this evening, which is our CEO race here in DeKalb County. Crucial that we know who's running, what their platforms are, what they stand for, and everything about what they intend to do in this position, as with all of our other races that we have had forums with this year as well. So again, thank you all for being here with us this evening. Very excited to have our candidates here to speak about their platforms and what they intend to do. I'd also like to introduce our moderator for this evening. I'm very excited to share. It is our current third vice chair, Larry Lowe. Larry has resided here in DeKalb County for nearly 14 years. During his time here in DeKalb County, he also earned a master's degree in science and with an emphasis in marketing from Georgia State University. Politically, he has served in DeKalb as the DeKalb Dems Chair of Communications, as the Chair of House District 87, as well as the Vice President of DeKalb Young Democrats. In addition, he currently represents the county as a state party committee member and the third vice chair of the African American Caucus. So we're very excited to have Larry moderating our debate here this evening. Larry, I am going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Chair White. DeKalb County's Organizational Act defines the CEO as having the exclusive power to supervise, direct, and control the administration of the county government. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. Each candidate would have 60 seconds to answer questions, follow-up questions, or to make a rebuttal. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement. We have 3 candidates running for CEO: Commissioner Steve Bradshaw of District 4, former Commissioner Larry Johnson of District 3, and former Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson of Super District 7. Now let's have opening statements. Commissioner Bradshaw, you have 90 seconds.
All right, good evening. Thank you all so much to the DeKalb Dems for hosting us this evening. So you all know I voted in my first presidential election, general election in 1984 for Walter Mondale, and I've been voting for Democrats ever since. My name is Steve Bradshaw, and I'm running for DeKalb County CEO. I'm a soldier, corporate sales executive, adjunct college professor, county commissioner, husband, friend, and all-around good guy. I want you to know that I do not seek this office for myself. I'm running because I love DeKalb County, and I want to see DeKalb County's future prosperity ensured. And I'm also running on behalf of all the people who have asked me to run. People in North DeKalb, people in Central DeKalb, people in South DeKalb, who have observed the way I've conducted myself in office over the past 7.5 years, who love DeKalb County as I do, and who have determined that my brand of leadership is what we need at the next level. As CEO, I will wake up every day fighting to make DeKalb County safer, cleaner, business friendlier, and more inclusive. And I'm confident that if we can execute across those 4 fronts, which we will lead DeKalb County to an entirely different place. Thank you all again for the opportunity. I look forward to the rest of tonight's program.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Bradshaw. Now let's move to Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Good evening, Democrats. Hope you're doing well. I'm Larry Johnson, no stranger to our DeKalb Dems. We started on this journey way back when I was part of the Obama team to get him elected. We started really working to make a difference in DeKalb. We're just about moving forward. I also been working in terms of getting our Dems elected up and down the ticket. We worked in 2020 as we worked with Abrams, Warnock, and Ossoff to make sure that we have a great election. I've been knocking on doors. I've been attending rallies. I help organize events. I've been part of your training. I even have John Jackson, the former chair of the DeKalb Dems, who supports me. But it's all about how we work together. We make the path by walking it together. We're going to thrive and win. And we're going to prioritize our infrastructure. We're going to make sure our young people are engaged and involved, and also include our public safety needs, have the best paid, best trained, best equipped. We're also going to win workforce innovation and next generation, working with our school system to make sure young people are tied to the vocational fields that are now and in the future, to make sure we can garner and make sure generation Y and Z are part and at the table. I was the chair of operations when we had to go through the 2020 elections. I passed the legislation giving people who don't speak English as their first language to make sure we put the ballots in a different language and making sure they were included in our democracy. We worked together to make sure the voting experience in DeKalb was a great one, and I want to continue working with you. LJ4CEO.com, LJ4CEO.com.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Johnson. And finally, we'll have Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Hello and good evening, DeKalb Democrats. I am Lorraine Cochran Johnson. I'm your former Super District 7 Commissioner. In 2018, you first elected me when I was underestimated, underfunded, and unlikely because I ran against an incumbent. But since being elected, I have truly been about the business of the people of DeKalb County. I sit here this evening and I am the commissioner who authored the video surveillance system legislation that now requires mandatory video surveillance at all of our gas and service stations to keep you safe. I am also the author of the box store ordinance that has taken us to a national prominence that is now used in 9 states that stop the proliferation of Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, and Dollar General in DeKalb County in underserved communities. And I'm also the author of the Vendor Bill of Ethics that requires mandatory reporting by those who go through procurement and have contracts with DeKalb County. In addition to my legislation, I've been the chair of Public Works and Infrastructure for the last 3 years. I have allocated more than $1.4 billion, representing the highest dollar amount allocated by a sitting commissioner in the history of DeKalb County. Additionally, I have saved DeKalb County taxpayers $92 million using mandatory audit as committee chair of Public Works and Infrastructure. I'm proud to say that I'm your 2023 elected official of the year by the American Public Works Association, and also the Georgia Act Housing Champion for 2023. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Lorraine. All right, so let's move to our first question. It is, what is your priority as CEO? Let's start with Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yes, thank you. So my first priority is public safety. That is the first priority of any government, is to ensure the safety of its citizens. And my approach is what I label as full spectrum, meaning we have to work on both the enforcement side and the prevention side. On the enforcement side, simply stated, I will execute dramatic pay and compensation increases for our public safety personnel so that we're able to both retain and attract the people that we need to serve in those roles. I use the word dramatic intentionally because what we've been doing up to now has been incremental. And while it's helped at the margins, it hasn't produced the kind of results that we would want. On the prevention side, it's a focus on our youth. So there are two programs I've championed as commissioner. One is Rise Up, which is a derivative of President Obama's My Brother's Keeper program, and our relationship with Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Metro Atlanta, which are two things I will greatly enhance as CEO.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, I will focus a lot on what I say public safety, but making sure that it includes our young people around prevention, because we have to have the best trained, best paid. I see something popped up. Okay, best trained, best paid public safety department in the country, in the state. But we also got to make sure we have the best equipped, best educated young people as well. And so I will work hard each and every day to bring a public health perspective around health and housing, to make sure that we have that connection to make things happen. The jail is not a place for people who have mental health and substance abuse. We need to have a crisis center. We need to make sure that we are focusing on affordable housing and workforce housing. So I will work hard each day to make sure we prioritize those things and make sure we fill these potholes. We can't afford to be dodging potholes and messing up our cars, because it's all about how do we connect the dots around our roads, our sidewalks, our trails to make things happen in our community. So I would take a public health approach that's centered around the community and individuals to make sure we have a safe, prosperous DeKalb County.
All right, thank you. And finally, Commissioner Lorraine.
Yes, I will have three major priorities. First, of course, is public safety. Second is economic development. And third will be housing. In the way of public safety, it's not enough to just say a drastic approach. According to FBI standards, which is the general source for determining the amount of officers, DeKalb County should have 2.4 officers per 1,000. Currently, we're operating with 1 per 1,000. It is absolutely imperative that we increase salaries. 2 years ago, a regional study was conducted and we raised pay to $55,000. However, I do not feel we compete regionally, but within the metro area. So as a result, Sandy Springs, Woody, and Brookhaven currently have the highest paid officers. I will raise officer salaries to be more in line with the $70,000 they receive. In terms of public safety, that's going to be important and critical.
Thank you, Commissioner Lorraine. All right, so we're going to move on to our next question, and it's going to start with Commissioner Larry Johnson. Can you explain your approach to good government and how have you practiced it as a commissioner?
Great question. I have practiced it during my last 22 years in office. I've been a person who understands that the government is the people and the taxpayer money is the people. I also was a presiding officer when we passed the first audit organization, the department. Also, I was the presiding officer when we passed the reconstituted ethics board. And so that leadership on the DeKalb County board has made it very clear that I'm about ethics and good government. We also made sure that the residents can speak first at our meetings, because a lot of residents may have to go to work and all that. So I moved the public comments to the beginning of the meeting when I became the presiding officer. And so I will work very hard to make sure we are connected with the people. We will have forums, not only we're having from Dunwoody to Decatur to Ellenwood, to make sure the department heads are coming out there that can answer your questions directly. And we'll make sure we continue to meet with our stakeholders, our business owners, and making sure that they're at the table to make sure that DeKalb County is united, better, and safer to make a difference.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lorraine?
Yes, my approach to good government will focus around operations, transparency, and inclusion. In terms of operations in DeKalb County, Georgia, we have many outdated systems. Many of our systems do not communicate and they do not facilitate best results for consumers. Coming from corporate America, I will take a more corporate centered approach, and I will put in place systems that allow us to be more responsive as well as more inclusive. I will build out and utilize DCTV as well as SMS texting and newsletters so that you are aware of what goes on in DeKalb County. And also, in the way of transparency, our website is in critical need of update. I will include critical links to information as well as audits that are performed by departments so that you are fully aware of what goes on in DeKalb County government. I will also continue my show so that we have online engagement.
Thank you. And Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yes, thank you. The number one thing is to be accessible to the people who put me in office. So I've done this as commissioner multiple ways with my regular newsletter, but one of the primary ways is by having a quarterly community breakfast meeting where I invite the major department heads to stand and take questions from the audience on issues that arise. And I stand there and take questions from my constituents on the things that are going on with them and the things they're concerned about. As CEO, I will continue to hold these town hall meetings and move them all over the county so that people know that their CEO is accessible. Second thing is deliver. I will work hard, I will deliver. Two examples from my time as county commissioner. One is the food pantry at Wade Walker Park, which feeds over 300 families every other week. And the second is the senior and community center at South Hairston and Elam Roads that we have delivered to the people of District 4 in DeKalb County.
Thank you. All right, our next question, which is going to first lead with Commissioner Lorraine. Recycling discrepancies and the police training center negotiations. Two issues the Board of Commissioners admitted to not having much insight into. As CEO, how will you resolve the lack of transparency between departments, and how will you increase transparency with the public?
Let me say first and foremost that it was through my committee, Public Works and Infrastructure, that I noticed a huge decline in recycling. And as a result, I called for an external audit of the department. And it was at that time that we determined that for 2 years, it had been authorized, the commingling of recycling as well as sanitation. In order to end such practices, one must be committed to delivering results as opposed to doing what is convenient. During that time, our sanitation department was low in officers due to COVID, but that's no excuse for charging individuals and failing to deliver a service. Also, I read about the negotiations for COP City, or the COP training facility. And I was never brought to the table as a commissioner and a member of the governing authority of DeKalb County to have the discussion. I will engage all 7 of my commissioners and we will set annual goals.
Thank you. Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yeah, so number one is regular team meetings with department heads so they learn from each other. Secondly, as CEO, as the leader, I need to clearly communicate my intent so people understand where I'm headed and they can decide whether they're on the Steve train or not. If they're not, they will have to find something else to do with their professional lives. Other things with regard to overall, transparency and interface with the public. County website needs an overhaul. That needs to be done. We will continue to send out regular email updates. And as I said previously, we will do in-person town hall meetings in every corner of DeKalb County over the course of my first 4 years as CEO. And one more thing, I'm going to be very, very intentional about Board of Commissioners relations, especially when it comes to DeKalb County's budget. I've been chair of the budget committee for the past 2 cycles. I get the budget when everybody else does, have no particular forward leaning or advanced insight. That needs to change. Commissioners need to be more of a part of the budget formulation.
Thank you, Commissioner Bradshaw. Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, the largest room in the world is the room for improvement. And I'm gonna be that CEO who makes sure we connect with our commissioners. I've been a commissioner for over 20 years, and I've had different styles of leadership as working with the CEO. But you also have to be proactive yourself and build relationships. Relationships are not a one-way street. And so I'm hoping that we work together with our commissioners because they run their districts. And I want to make sure that I'm keenly attuned to the needs and understanding the things that have to happen in each individual district. So we will have meetings, we'll connect. I'm going to make sure we just roll out in terms of communication to make sure that we have a clear communication strategy. And also I will utilize the committee structure that we have to make sure the department heads are going to those meetings and can give correct and accurate information and where the goals are and where we need to go, because our citizens deserve it and they demand accountability. And we need to make sure we're meeting the goals to make things happen.
Thank you. All right, so the next question is, what is your pitch to voters who see development in cities and would like to either incorporate their own cities or be annexed into one? We're going to start with Commissioner Bradshaw.
Well, first we have to deliver good government. That's what we have to do. But the cityhood movement won't just die because we're executing on all cylinders a little better. There are bad faith actors out there because the law is so poorly written that will continue to grab what they think they're entitled to. I call it the Wild Wild West. And there are neighborhoods, communities in DeKalb County that every time the legislature goes into session, they are freaked out because they don't know which next annexation plan their community is going to be drawn into. So in addition to good government, I've suggested, and I continue to suggest, that we put a moratorium of 3 years on all incorporations and annexations. So we go about the manner of deciding what the contours of DeKalb County are going to be in an orderly and systematic manner. And that way you take away that worry and that uncertainty for the communities that keep getting drawn into people's annexation plans.
All right, Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, first and foremost, we have to understand that the folks who are asking for cities are residents of DeKalb. They're not separate. They're not on another different level. We got to make sure that we go meet with them and find out what are the issues that are pressing, the service delivery deficiencies that are in the area that's causing you to have this angst and also causing you to feel like you're not a part of DeKalb or getting the services you want. I'll be a hands-on CEO. I will go out there and meet with them to find out how can we rectify those service delivery problems and bring them in-house to see how we can fix it. Because we have to make sure that every resident is getting the bang for their buck, the tax money that they pay. They need to get those services, the same services, back out to them. So I'll be keenly aware. I'll listen to them, bring that information back to make sure that every citizen is getting the services they deserve, that they pay for, and that we can all continue to make sure DeKalb is moving forward together.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lorraine.
Let me say that the cure to cityhood is good local government. It's time that DeKalb County master service delivery. I've never been critical of cities because they form because there is a lack. Under my administration, I will master service delivery. The truth is, annexations are governed by the state. Of course, our delegation controls those. So we don't have the ability to issue a moratorium. What we do have the ability to do is master service delivery. So under my administration, we'll start with the basics. First of all, we'll ensure that people are present to do their jobs, because currently there remains an executive order that has sent DeKalb County employees home. I'll immediately lift that order and we'll bring people back to work so that they can execute and perform their duties. Also, as your CEO, I will critically analyze each department to determine where we need best practices, and I'll handle and move those practices forward.
Thank you. And a quick follow-up to that question. The state legislature attempted to standardize the cityhood process this past legislative session. Would you support a standardized approach to cityhood? Let's start with Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yes, yes. Is it you asking for a yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, anything that makes the process a little more equitable and fair, I would be supportive of.
Alrighty, Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, it was a study done about 6 or 7 years ago with Georgia Tech, talking about annexation and all the such like. So this is not the first time we've had a cityhood standardization that was present. But I would support anything that lays out how it works before you become a city. Because right now, if you take the city, if you want to be a city, you take the most expensive commercial properties first, and you leave unincorporated with all of the stuff that don't generate taxes and like an eyesore. And we cannot afford for unincorporated DeKalb to be left in the dark while all the rich parts become part of a city. And so we need standardization. We need to make sure it's fair and equitable for everyone before you can even become a city or even annex property.
Alrighty, Commissioner Lorraine.
I would say yes, that I would support a standardized form of annexation. However, the key for me is also equity. Currently, when cities form, they are required to take on 3 mandatory services. As a general rule, those are the lowest hanging fruit and the easiest services to deliver. I don't feel in DeKalb County as a CEO or a commissioner that I get to pick and choose who I serve. I believe that if cities desire to form, they should be responsible for the delivery of all essential services and not just the ones that come easiest. Because the truth of the matter is, it is a lot of work to deliver services. And the bulk of our cities have ongoing IGAs, intergovernmental agreements, and DeKalb County continues to provide the most critical services and those that require the greatest attention. So I will support standardized annexation as long as there is equity.
Thank you. And the next question, the Charter Review Board suggested giving commissioners subpoena power. Do you support this? Let's start with Commissioner Larry Johnson.
No, because the information around that the CEO that we have, I've never had a problem getting information, and I think it could be used as a weapon, and it can cause other issues. And I think there's ways through the committee process that you can get information, and all it takes is 5 votes anyway on the board, or 4 votes. I got to get it correct. 5 votes to override a veto if the CEO does it. And so there's other ways that you can get information that's available to us. But it's all about relationships. It's all about working together. And I think that's the main part that I would do to establish those working relationships with our county commissioners to make sure that we're moving together because we want the best for DeKalb and the residents. We're elected by the same residents. Let's have the same level of respect, the same level of delivery of services, and making sure that we're a prosperous county moving forward together.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorraine.
I do not support placing veto power within or with the Board of Commissioners. And I say that because in my 5 years, 3 months, and 10 days, I have seen fellow commissioners use even the vote as a weapon. And if given the authority to utilize veto power, I have concerns. I do believe that the CEO of DeKalb should have the ability to make decisions as it relates to the ability to actually subpoena, and will not and should not abuse that power. Of course, by the commissioners, of course, there is still the authority, if there is a disagreement, to move forward and call back any actions. So I do not agree with placing the ability to have subpoena power within the hands of the Board of Commissioners. I do believe that it should remain with the Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you. And Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yes, my answer is absolutely not. If the goal is to induce better relations between the CEO and the Board of Commissioners, giving the Board of Commissioners subpoena power is exactly the wrong way to go about doing that. I could see that power being abused in the hands of folks who have ulterior motives. So I would not be supportive of that in any way, shape, or form.
All righty, thank you. The next question, the 2050 Unified Plan, Glenwood Road and Columbia Drive Area Development Plan, Memorial Drive Revitalization Plan are plans commissioned by the county. What have you done as commissioner to implement these plans? We're going to start with Commissioner Lorraine.
Let me say, as it relates to the 2050 Unified Plan, not only along Glenwood Road and Columbia Drive, but across DeKalb County, I have been true to it. As it relates to our unified plans, it creates for us the framework in which we need to move progressively forward. I will give a perfect example is the Chipotle that's now located on Wesley Chapel Road. Due to the unified plan, it was not an acceptable use. However, because in certain parts of DeKalb, we have been so slow in the development of desirable restaurants and businesses, I move forward with the approval, and I also received the second from Commissioner Marita Davis Johnson. So I will say that we have to continue to be specific. We also must do a better job of recruiting businesses that fit into our comprehensive plan and our long range vision, as well as supplying greater revenue dollars.
Thank you. Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yeah, so I funded the Memorial Drive study primarily, with a little bit of funding from planning and sustainability. So I'm very familiar with that. We have been executing since the Board of Commissioners approved that plan a few years ago. And the guidance I gave to the consultant was that process needed to have two major things. One is robust community engagement. So whatever comes out is a reflection of what the people said they wanted. And two, they need to produce a report that contains what I refer to as actionable intelligence, meaning things that we can actually act upon, not just another pretty report with a bunch of pretty pictures that winds up sitting on a shelf collecting dust somewhere. And we are executing pursuant to that. I would suggest that anybody who can take a drive around the Kensington MARTA station, look at all the development that's going on. That's all occurred within the last few years. And that's what's in store for Memorial Drive heading east.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, sir. When I first got in office, we had a zoning code that was still back in the 1970s. So I had to take on the task of moving from a suburban area to more of an urban area. And so that was a long haul that we had to do under me as the chair of Planning, Economic, Community Services. The 2050 plan, unified plan, was under my watch to make sure it was deliberate. I worked with all the commissioners to get the things that they needed. And some of the results when I first started was we didn't have sidewalks. As you see on Glenwood Road, the sidewalks are being completed. Candler Road sidewalks was not completed as well as Columbia Drive. And so it's all about infrastructure. Infrastructure leads to economic development. And we want to make sure that we have something in place so when we move forward, we can. And changing some of these antiquated zoning laws would put gas stations and liquor stores and all that in the same spot. It took a long time because the laws were written in such a way that if you already were there, you could not change what was happening.
Thank you. Next question, film tax credits were under scrutiny this legislative session. If those tax credits are changed, how will you mitigate its impact considering studios in the county like Black Hawk Studios and Assembly Atlanta are still in development? Let's start with Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Well, I think those tax credits, as you saw, did not get eliminated because they understand we have businesses that really benefit from that. Most of the wood, a lot of the framings have come out of Tucker, Georgia, from the Kofor brothers. We also have an initiative that I started with Cedar Grove and McNair High School, where we're training young people to take the jobs, because right now you have to bring skill sets from California. Average salary is $100,000. So just imagine those young people will now be able to go to work and make a difference in our community. The largest investment so far in South DeKalb was $380 million. That allows about 7,000 construction jobs and 2,000 permanent jobs. But it's all about how do we use it to make sure that the community is benefiting from making things happen. And we also got a 140-acre park that's going to be a Michelle Obama Park with the first playground for differently able children with autism, hearing impaired, sight impaired, to be right there in our community. And so those tax credits are beneficial and they can help our community.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorraine.
Let me say that, the tax credits in 2023 amounted to 4.1 billion, and that doesn't include auxiliary services. And of course, when we talk about the film industry, it's through GIA, Georgia Entertainment Industry Investment Act. And honestly, it has come under scrutiny most years. However, it has not been voted down because it brings a substantial amount of revenue to the state of Georgia. All estimates probably in the neighborhood, all combined, of well over $6 billion. So if the tax credits were to leave, I would work alongside our studios to increase our camera ready division. When it comes to film studios and productions, set developers as well as talent scouts and producers, they look for camera ready environments. So I will work alongside the DeKalb Development Authority and our film studios to ensure that we have a robust line of options available to producers.
Thank you. And Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yes, thank you for the question. I certainly wouldn't try to attack this alone. I would work closely with the General Assembly on the front end to, especially our DeKalb delegation, to try to prevent something like that from happening. And then I would work very closely with the heads of the studios. It's their business. They have better market intelligence than we do. So I would ask them what they needed from me as the DeKalb CEO to facilitate them getting what they need so that their businesses are sustained in DeKalb County.
Thank you. And a follow-up question to that. In 2020, you all voted for a land swap with Blackhawk Studios. In 2021, the CEO Ryan Millsap sold Blackhawk, leaving the promise of jobs and further community investment unsettled. In April, the AJC and ProPublica reported that Millsap allegedly sent racist and anti-Semitic texts. Do you stand by your vote for the land swap? Starting with Commissioner Lorraine.
It's interesting you sent this question because 2 years ago, I announced that as a sitting commissioner, the land swap is the only vote that I regret. I feel that there were individuals who were fully aware that the land was in the process of being sold. So let me be very clear. Blackhawk Studios is now Shadowbox. Within 30 days of the land swap, the land was sold to a separate entity. And since that time, the entire process has remained in litigation. I sit before you and I'm the only commissioner who has not accepted campaign contributions nor funds from Mr. Millsap. I believe that the deliverables to the community should be met, and I don't care personally who is the owner. Those were promised. I do feel also that there are parties who worked strategically to ensure a specific outcome, not on the behalf of the people, but on the behalf of Mr. Millsap. So I do not stand by the vote. I apologize for ever taking it.
Thank you. Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yes, I don't stand by the vote. That was a mistake. I'm a big enough boy to admit when I've made a mistake. All of us act with the information we have at any given time. That's all any of us can do. But the key thing is to admit when you've made a mistake and move forward from there. But the key word in your question is unsettled. The situation as we sit here this moment is unsettled, meaning there is still an opportunity for Shadowbox, the current owner, to make good on those prior commitments. And me as CEO, along with the rest of the Board of Commissioners, the governing authority, should be holding their feet to the fire to make sure they honor the commitments that were made.
And Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, sir. Looking back, those comments were deplorable. If those comments were public before, that project would never saw the daylight because it's disrespectful as an African American. Those comments are deplorable, and to our Jewish brothers and sisters as well. But that's the face that we did not see. We got the public persona and working through the community, not through the board, and working with our CEO. They were deliberate in their approach to making sure that the legal department made sure that the real estate transactions, the land for public trust, All those things had to be settled before it got to us. So it's easy to look back and say you don't want to vote for it, but you didn't have all those things in front of you. And so the community felt good about it. They wanted the jobs. They wanted to have something about economic development and green space. And we didn't know that Ryan Millsap was that type of person. And so, but it went through a strenuous process from Land and Public Trust, our legal department, our CEO, and it was brought before us with the community's blessing.
Thank you. As reported in Decatur, one of you mentioned that South DeKalb has been inundated with affordable housing, landfills, gas station, and package stores. All of you represent some portion of South DeKalb, if not all. What have you done to prevent bad development in your representative districts? Let's start with Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Yep. So to be clear, my district is Central DeKalb, but I support and stand with South DeKalb. My current district is Central DeKalb, but what we've done is voted no to some bad zoning, or got the developer to withdraw. One example, on Memorial Drive, a developer wanted to put in a crematorium. The community didn't want it. I listened to the community. I talked to the developer who was trying to pitch me on the virtues of a crematory. And I told him I was elected by the people who put me in office. It would be ridiculous of me to go against the wishes of my constituents. So that's how we control it, by voting down bad zoning proposals or getting the applicant to withdraw, as was the case that I just outlined.
Thank you. Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, people, it took me a while to understand this, but even when you have zonings, the zoning categories were already in place 20, 30 years ago. What we did in 2016 was that we got tired as a board, and I have my resolution right here that was passed that basically put a moratorium on expansion of alcohol outlets, automobile gas stations, automobile repairs, pawn shops, drive-through restaurants, because we had felt we're not getting the type of quality and things that we need, and try to work out those details. We're working with Georgia State to find out where can we go. Of course, you got to go through the legal system. After a while, a moratorium, as the developers had went to court to try to overturn it, and we could not maintain a moratorium, but we did try to put standards in place. But what we found out is that if you already are grandfathered in, no matter what new zoning categories you put in, it didn't equate to where you are right now. And so anything that came out of the ground new had to be part of our new property maintenance and zoning codes. But anything that was old, it could still stay commercial.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lorraine.
Yes, the specific question is, what have we done to prevent bad development? In 2019, within 60 days of being elected, I was in the law office with a resolution, and actually a drafted ordinance as well, to stop the proliferation of Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, and Dollar General in South and unincorporated DeKalb, because all research showed that they were proliferating South DeKalb. District 1 had $1 store, District 2 had 2, Commissioner Larry Johnson's District 3 had 27, District 4, Commissioner Steve Bradshaw had 24, and District 5, Commissioner Marita Davis Johnson had 17. 85% of those businesses that adversely affect us were in South DeKalb. So through my resolution, we've not had a dollar store apply for a business license since 2019. Beyond that, I've taken actual steps. I retained Ryan Gravel, who has developed a revitalization plan for South DeKalb Mall. Half of the fact we have to be more strategic.
Thank you. So I do have a follow-up question to your response. Over a dozen gas stations within 1.5 miles of each other between Gresham Road and the interstate on Moreland Avenue and Flat Shoals Road at I-20 exit. There was a ban on dollar stores in the county. Do you support a ban on gas stations? Commissioner Lorraine.
I would say in certain areas, because the truth of the matter is we've not been equitable in development, and there are large concentrations in certain areas of gas stations, of auto repair shops, of dollar stores. And primarily, this is south of Memorial Drive, unfortunately, in South and unincorporated DeKalb. So, in order to better help us grow, and I would like to say, since coming on board with DeKalb County, Georgia, I have only taken an affirmative vote on 3 gas and service stations throughout the entire county. We've had some bad practices, and at this point, it's time for us to correct those. And as CEO, I will ensure that we have equitable development, and I will institute practices where we are strategic in recruiting the types of businesses that we desire. And also through code enforcement and compliance, it's time that we clean up many of those locations because many of them are not up to par in meeting standards for the community.
Thank you. Commissioner Steve Bradshaw, do you support a ban on gas stations?
So every zoning application is unique. So I can't sit here and categorically say that I would support a ban. I can't say that categorically. Each situation would have to be evaluated on its own merits, depending on where it's being proposed, what other gas stations exist in that area. So each would have to be evaluated on its own. Just as a side note, the CEO doesn't have a vote in the zoning process. That is the sole purview of the county commission. But the CEO does appoint the director of planning and sustainability. So I'd make sure he would have clarity on what my priorities are before he or she would have clarity on what my priorities are before I offered anybody that position.
Thank you. And Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, sir. As the person who chaired planning and economic development, the law department in the state of Georgia, United States will tell you, you can't just blatantly out ban a business. So although it might have been a moratorium, if anyone wants to, if that property is zoned commercial and it fits that category, you can still build. And that's why I want to make sure people are very clear. A ban is a ban, but as a CEO, I won't have a vote in those type of things. But that's why I will go to work every day to make sure we have strong economic development that's mixed use, that's pedestrian friendly, and use my workforce housing ordinance to make sure we have firefighters, teacher, and police officers so we can have viable businesses and also focus on small business development. We got a lot of entrepreneurs in our community, and I know they want more than the gas station. And so we can't outright ban it, but we also can start doing on the proactive side to focus on economic development that can drive the type of development. As the CEO, that's my job, and I will do it.
Thank you. The next question, Capital B News reported on issues with code enforcement, slow response in DeKalb, in addition to slow response to open records requests. What's the issue and how do you plan to resolve it? Starting with Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
All right. The issue is our overall customer service delivery is subpar. That's the issue. And I know that because I have somebody in my office whose basic job is to deal with constituent issues. At least 80 to 90% of the calls we get in our office are from somebody who tried to call a department, get their problem resolved, and it went unresolved. Whether they left a voice message and never got a phone call back, whether they got somebody on the phone and that person was rude to them, something has induced them to call their county commissioner to try to get resolution, which I'm happy to do, but it shouldn't take that. So to address that, we need to make sure each department has the proper funding and make sure each employee has the proper training in the ways and means of customer service so that when people interface with Steve Bradshaw's government, they will be treated with respect like the tax-paying citizens that they are.
Thank you. Commissioner Larry Johnson.
I would make sure that customer service is at the top. I will bring improved technology around our 311 system. That's a system that can be used for customer-related calls. You can get a ticket number and track that ticket number all the way until that job is completed. And I'll have a dashboard set up with a chief officer around processing to make sure that we're responding to those calls, make sure the calls are answered, and making sure that whatever the item that was called in, that it actually gets fixed. And so I will approach it from that standpoint, but also I'll bring in our citizens on a quarterly basis to let us know how we can improve customer service, what areas may need different innovations and creativity. And so I would love to bring making sure that the customers are at the table to making sure that we are providing the best and stellar services for a world-class system that I think DeKalb County can do and needs to do to make it better for the citizens that we serve.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
I would say that slow response times in DeKalb center around two things. One is technology, and two, a lack of clearly defined job roles and responsibilities. Within our various departments, I've found that many job descriptions are not clearly expressed. And what I've found in government is ambiguity leads to a lack of accountability, and that means no one is ultimately responsible. In terms of technology, in my office, I instituted CRM, client relationship management software, and I've used Salesforce. The county does not currently have a system that allows us to communicate across departments. And in certain departments like code enforcement, that is absolutely critical. So in a Lorraine Cochran Johnson administration, I will bring the technology that's required to make us more efficient. I'll also change code compliance from being responsive to being proactive because
Thank you, Commissioner. A follow-up question, there are several empty buildings, some owned by the county. As CEO, how will you address the issues of empty buildings and blight? Let's start with Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Great question. I think one of the things you have to do is have an assessment on what is needed to make sure our community is stronger and safer. Some of the buildings may need to be sold, but we also have nonprofits and service providers that may provide a vital service to our community. And so one of those items was the Community Achievement Center that was in my district, working with two organizations. We now have financial literacy, they do home buying assistance, and these organizations help out to build a better and stronger community. And so I would do that type of assessment to see what we can use, what we can't, but you also want to make sure that we have the right public-private partnerships to go in there to making sure we're meeting the level of service that is needed in our communities, but also building the human development infrastructure. Our young people, our seniors need to have services closer to them. And so I would look at how we can use empty buildings to make sure that we utilize them to the best of our ability to have a better, safer, stronger DeKalb County.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
This is a great question because it's easy for me to tell you what I've already done. As your commissioner in 2019, after understanding the high number of buildings that were blight within our community and empty, I am the commissioner who, through my discretionary funds, provided $200,000 to reinstate the DeKalb Regional Land Bank Authority. Now, what a land bank authority does is have the ability to take properties, cleanse titles, and get them back into productive use and on tax rolls. Land bank authorities are also wonderful tools for creating affordable housing in many communities. So that is what I've already done. Currently, we have almost 300 properties that are waiting to go online through our land bank authority. So as your CEO, I'll see that the Land Bank Authority moves. I funded it in 2019, and it is yet to become fully functional. We were on delay for 3 years waiting for single appointments that weren't made.
Thank you. Commissioner Steve Bradshaw, same question.
Yes, thank you. With regard to DeKalb properties, I would work with our facilities department and systematically evaluate each of our county-owned buildings to determine if we need to rehab them, we need to sell them, or we need to demolish them. And I would take those actions in a quick and decisive manner. With regard to private dwellings, that induces what's called an MRIM process, and that involves the courts. But we need to make sure that process moves forward as well. But with regard to what I have more control over, which is our buildings, I will decide whether to rehab them, sell them, or demolish them. and I'll make those decisions in relatively short order.
Thank you. The next question, the Seminole landfill has been a nuisance for residents in the Rock Mill neighborhood. What will you do to address the environmental impact of the Seminole landfill? Let's start with Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Yes, as Chair of Public Works and Infrastructure, I can say that the Seminole landfill has been an ongoing issue. And I'm not sure that I've always gotten the direct answers and the truth as it relates to what has been done to remediate things like odor, also the harvesting of methane gas. And I do also believe that it's very important from an environmental perspective for us to encourage composting, because many residents don't realize that methane gas is a byproduct of placing fruits and vegetables into your waste container. Anything that comes from the earth should go back. So, as your CEO, I will do a better job of educating the public, and I will also bring back online our last remaining center for the harvest of methane gas, so that it can be utilized in clean vehicles for DeKalb County, so that we are generative.
Thank you. Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Yes, so as CEO, I'll work very closely with the environmental groups to seek their guidance and help to come up with solutions. I also work closely with the impacted communities to seek their guidance and help to come up with solutions. As CEO, I will give clear guidance to the sanitation director on how that facility is to be run and operated. I'll also make sure they're allocated the appropriate funds to help them discharge their duties. And then any contracts for anybody doing work out there need to be let to people who can do the job properly with respect for the surrounding communities.
Thank you. And Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, sir. Once I found out about it, I went to our CEO on how the smell was and the nuisance. I said it's unacceptable. The residents who live over there need to have safe, clean air and not feel like it's some odorous thing in the area. That's the first thing I did. I demanded action to make sure we move, and they moved the cell further away. And now we've tried to, I need to make sure that they went over there to make sure that smell is mitigated in our community. The other part is I worked on a Charm Center, which is right off Columbia Drive, which it recycles hard recycled products from paint to mattresses. And now we're going to have an 8-acre facility with 4 acres dedicated to recycling and 4 acres dedicated to a farm, so we can have pop-up farmers markets right in our community for healthy eating and active living. And so I'll be a CEO who's focused on the environment to make sure that we can change that methane to trash to cash, so we can use those for our vehicles and our county cars.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson, have you responded yet?
I have.
Okay, thank you. So you all have been on record in support of the expansion of 285. Have you all collaborated with GDOT to reduce noise pollution and the environmental impact of the trees being cut? Let's start with Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Certainly the county leadership, the administration has been working collaboratively with GDOT to address those issues that have been raised. As CEO, I will certainly continue to do that. I will be more actively engaged with the Atlanta Regional Commission and GDOT. We have an appointee to the GDOT board that represents this area. I will be more closely collaborative with whomever that person is to make sure these projects proceed in a systematic and timely manner. And I'll also make sure that all the relevant departments within DeKalb County are fully engaged in this process. Everything from transportation to planning and sustainability to roads and drainage to whatever department has a hand in this project, they need to have a seat at the table to help us all work through making sure this happens in the proper way together.
Thank you. Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, as anybody will tell you, DeKalb County added 100,000 new residents in the last 10 years. 285, when I first moved here, you can go to 285. Rush hour now starts at 12 noon and before. So we need to work with GDOT, but also with our state legislators to make sure that we have a more robust system around bus rapid transit, heavy and light rail, to make sure we're moving forward. There was something in the paper the other day which says from Las Vegas to LA, 218 miles will be $12 billion. Marta's saying for 4 miles, it'll be $8 billion in Georgia. And those numbers does not add up. So as their CEO, I'm going to make sure that South DeKalb gets the heavy rail that is always deserved and need to be in line to make sure because that increases economic development and will make sure that we're moving forward and create jobs and decrease asthma and heart disease in our community.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Yes, I am in support of the I-285, I-20 interchange. It is based on science. South DeKalb is getting its own spaghetti junction, and that's based upon the expectation of increased traffic. I have been at the table. I'm actually the commissioner because in 2019, the project was announced during my first year. We lost 2 years due to COVID, but the project was further delayed because we had not approved the detour route that was requested. So I am the commissioner who went directly to our COO and CEO and asked that we move forward because this is over a $300 million project that's designed to help alleviate traffic for us here in South DeKalb. But beyond supporting that project, it's time that we deal with high capacity transit in DeKalb County. It is no secret that high capacity transit is needed. We have failed as a board of commissioners to take decisive action due to divisiveness and not coming together to make solid plans.
Thank you. And a follow-up question, do you support the expansion of the DeKalb Peachtree Airport? Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Honestly, short of you saying or defining expansion, I honestly cannot answer that for you, Mr. Lowe, because depending upon who you speak with, expansion is defined a lot of different ways. Currently, there is a hangar project that is on task. So, and that's only one aspect. Others have environmental concerns as it relates to larger aircrafts and noise pollution, as well as environmental concerns. So unless I know specifically what you're defining expansion as, I won't say that I will or will not support it until I have greater information on what it is one seeks to do. My first concern is for the public safety of the community. And for anyone watching, PDK Airport is the second busiest airport in the state of Georgia. And of course, it continues to grow. So we do need to be very careful in how we grow, and it will require us to be more strategic in the future.
Thank you. Commissioner Bradshaw, Steve Bradshaw.
Yes, thanks. So let's start with this statement that PDK is a jewel. All right, PDK is a valuable asset in DeKalb County. It should be treated as such. It should be regarded as such. I will treat it as such as CEO, as I've done as a county commissioner. Now, the proposal for the Sky Harbor hangar expansion is pending. I have not made a decision on that yet. Recently, a BOC colleague has called for a deferral of that item pending an environmental impact study. The administration is coming back to us probably at our next board meeting to tell us what the ramifications, the contours of what that would look like in terms of time. Once I get better clarity on what that entails, I'll be in a better position to make a decision on whether or not I support that project. But as I sit here this evening, I'm willing to let that due diligence process play itself out.
Thank you. And Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Just looking on the face value of the question, no to expansion. I want to work with the community and focus on renovation of PDK. It's old. Some of the runways may be antiquated, may not be safe. The environmental impact, but as the operation chair, I made sure that we have an environmental impact study before we try to do anything. But you have to make sure you engage and connect with the community because they know what's best for them. They understand the projects and they have to live with the noise and all the things that may come with it. And so I will guide my interest with working with those district commissioners and help to make a sound decision because That's where it needs to stop because they represent that community. And I want to hear from them on which way that we need to go.
All righty, thank you. Next question, Bloomberg ranked Atlanta Metro #2 for sprawl in 2014. What can a county do to reduce car dependence? Let's start with Commissioner Larry Johnson.
You can reduce it by bringing us bus rapid transit, heavy rail, light rail to our community because right now you're spending a lot of time in traffic. That means there's less time with your family, there's less time with just relaxation. All those things add up to a great quality of life. And so I will look at that very carefully as the CEO to make sure I'm championing all forms of what I call transportation options from biking to walking. As you know, I was the commissioner who made the tie-breaking vote to bring sidewalks to Central and South DeKalb. Walking is a very, very crucial aspect to your health, your wellness, and connectivity to our business community. And so I will be gung-ho about bringing every public health initiative that I can to connect with the wellness of the people in our community. And I think it plays a very key role around being data-driven, but also centering your initiatives around what is in the best health of our people, because your zip code is more important than your genetic code. Place does matter.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson, same question.
What I would say is necessary to reduce car dependence is high capacity transit as well as mass transit. And I will sit here and go on record as saying light rail. Because currently, with Biden's Infrastructure Act that was passed, it is the largest reserve of federal funding in the history of the United States available. And currently, DeKalb County cannot take advantage of those funds because we do not have a dedicated funding source to support us in the expansion of high capacity transit in any form. The science tells us what we need to do. Transit oriented development, by and large, has bypassed DeKalb County because whether you look at the top end, who's looking at an express lane project, or you're looking at the Clifton corridor, we've not taken action. Even in South DeKalb, understanding that we need to expand rail to Stonecrest Mall, we failed to take action. So as your CEO, you can depend on me to bring the 12 municipalities together and create a definitive course of action.
Thank you. And Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Yep, we need to create more walkable communities. We need to support transit-oriented development, like the development that's going on around the Kensington MARTA station. We need to support transportation alternatives, bus rapid transit, light rail, heavy rail, some combination. We need to be about the business of coming to a consensus and then moving on it. And we also need to induce more connectivity in our path and trail networks so that people can get around on bikes or walking or wherever they need to get to in a network that doesn't require them to get in an automobile.
Thank you. Next question, DeKalb has received or will receive several federal funds via the infrastructure law and the American Rescue Plan. How can DeKalb effectively use these resources and prevent politics from slowing down the process? Let's start with Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Well, I think to date, the way our CARES Act funds, our ARP tranches of funds have been managed has been by and large pretty good, except for the fact that pushing the money out is an entirely too slow process. Each of us has commissioners were granted allocations, and we've all made allocations to worthy agencies throughout this DeKalb County doing great work. The problem has been it's taken too long for the money to actually get to them. So we make an allocation and the intended recipient gets excited about this potential allocation. Then months go by before they get the allocation. At the end of that process, they wind up disillusioned because it took so long. So we got to make sure that process is tighter. We as politicians need to get out of the way, starting with me, and we need to lead by example and make sure the monies that are allocated gets to their intended recipients in a timely manner.
Thank you. Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, sir. I'm the former president of the National Association of Counties. So I worked directly with President Biden and Vice President Harris to bring the American Rescue Plan to fruition. $65 billion, 140 million came to DeKalb County. It helped with gift cards, it helped with COVID testing, it helped with food giveaways, it helped with rental assistance. We have served over $50 million to families who were facing eviction to get them up to 3 months worth of care to make sure they could stay in their home. Then I championed a $973 billion bipartisan infrastructure law, which helped us with our roads, will help us with transit, will help us with our trails. And so you'll have a commissioner who has relationships and experience with people at the federal and state level already. And so I'm committed to that. It was a time where we didn't have essential workers who can get shots because they had to have a primary care physician's note. We moved to South DeKalb Mall and teamed up with Medcura Federal Health, the health clinic, to make sure over 30,000 people got shots and over 7,000 people got a test. 30,000 people got tested, 7,000 got shots.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Yes, as it relates to the question for the funds that have already been received and how can we effectively use those resources, DeKalb County received a total of $76 million. And by and large, those funds must be expended by the end of the year. Many of you have witnessed us provide mass feedings all over DeKalb County. Also, we've used a large portion of that money for triple overtime for police officers. I believe that we could have better utilized the funds because in many departments across DeKalb County, technology is sorely lacking and we have not had the resources to make necessary upgrades. I also believe that we should have raised the pay of the officers because we're now standing on what one moderator described as a cliff. Because at the end of the year, when we can no longer pay triple overtime, what happens when officers are brought to the harsh reality that their salary has not increased?
Thank you. All right, so let's move on to our next subject, housing. According to Fox 5 Atlanta, contractors and builders have ranked DeKalb's permitting process as one of the slowest. What's the issue and how do we solve it? Let's start with Commissioner Larry Johnson.
You solve it by going in there and finding out why do we have so many regulations that's stopping us from getting the vital resources. Housing is a right. We shouldn't be sitting here waiting 2 to 3 years before you can get a permit when we have people out on the street. And so my first day in office will be to look at how do we make sure that the permitting process is amenable to making sure we focus on our infrastructure and also our human development infrastructure to get these regulations out the way because time is money. Most of the people who are waiting on permits are small business owners. They can't afford it. They have to get out here so they can make ends meet because we have to make sure that they are providing for a strong middle class and low income communities. And so that's day one when I get there to work on that in my first 100 days to make sure that our permitting process is moving as a world-class system to make sure people have their permits on time, that people are getting the work that they need done, and that we have the proper regulations to get housing done and infrastructure in place.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Yes, Fox 5 got it right. Our planning and sustainability department, it has a broken process. And I believe that focuses mostly around technology, but also a lack of clearly defined job roles and responsibilities. I sit before you this evening and I am proud to be endorsed by the Greater Metro Atlanta Home Builders Association. They believe in me because they know I understand. Currently, we use in DeKalb County, Hanson. By all accounts, it is an absolute nightmare. Upon receiving federal funds, we invested another $3 million on what already was a nightmare. When in Cobb County, Gwinnett, and the city of Atlanta, a Acela is what is used. It is far more efficient, and it is time that we create a better system because we have developers that refuse to do business in DeKalb County because of the slow permitting process and have clearly said to me that we can develop a project in surrounding counties quicker than we can get a planning and sustainability report in DeKalb.
Thank you. Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Yep, the issues are antiquated technology, antiquated processes, and a lack of a customer service mentality. To address antiquated technology, it's investing the money to upgrade the technology. To address the antiquated processes, we need to seek guidance and look for best practices either here in the region or wherever this process is being executed properly somewhere else in this country. We don't need to take a not invented here mentality. And then a lack of customer service mentality, that goes back to training. We need to train people properly so they understand how to interface with the business community and all of the community properly. They need to learn that time is money. Now, I have a private sector background. I think I have a full understanding of what a business owner, a business person needs from their government in order to keep a process going. So we'll make sure everybody understands that time is money.
Thank you. Next question, a workforce housing ordinance in 2023 was passed unanimously. The ordinance promotes increased density, relaxes parking requirements, and increases height minimums. How will you upsell these changes to those in the community who oppose any of the aforementioned? Let's start with Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Let me say that as it relates to workforce housing, affordable housing, as well as marketplace housing, I will be a CEO who utilizes the power of the P3, public-private partnerships. Currently, the tool that's mostly used in the development of workforce and affordable housing is LIHTCs, which are low-income housing tax credits. However, the issue with the use of those is that with a LIHTC, you're only required to set aside 10% of the housing. If you're building 100 units and I'm only getting 10, but you're receiving a massive tax break, you've not done me justice nor the people of DeKalb County, because we sorely lack workforce housing. So you can depend on me to utilize tools that have never been used currently in the development of housing.
Thank you. Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Yep. So question is, as CEO, how will you ensure that the ordinance is effectively implemented? By giving clear guidance and direction to the Director of Planning and Sustainability and holding that person accountable for making sure the elements of what the BOC has approved are executed properly.
Thank you. Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Well, just to let everybody know, I'm the one who sponsored the ordinance for workforce housing. It's the most consequential ordinance we have. It's going to build public-private partnerships. It's going to put housing as a right and making sure that we are on the track to make sure our firefighters, teachers, police officers, folks who are in the middle income, low income can stay in our communities. And so I'm, as the CEO, I'm going to champion, because this is the ordinance that I got passed unanimously to make sure that we're doing it. The first one in the region to make that type of ordinance a reality. And so we're going to work to make sure that this is moving forward. I work with folks in the East Lake area already with our former Mayor Shirley Franklin. We have some townhomes going up that will be based on your income, that will finally put people who can live in our community, who may not make the best income, but want to have home ownership. That's a peace of mind they want everybody to have. And I will continue to champion that and make sure I'm doing it, because workforce housing is where we need to go.
All righty, thank you. I do want to just make sure that I get clear answers on this question. So a part of the question was there's going to be increase in density and relaxed parking. How will you deal with community opposition to any increase in density? I want to go back to Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Well, I mean, if people want growth and improvement in their areas, density is a part of that. So we manage that again by what we do in the zoning process. And again, the CEO doesn't have a vote in the zoning process, but CEO does appoint the Director of Planning and Sustainability. So as CEO, I will work collaboratively with the Board of Commissioners on issues of that nature that arise, but we have to educate the public about the benefits of what density provides in terms of income, rooftops, and just make sure they understand that it's not necessarily encroachment on their way of life and quality of life.
Thank you. Commissioner Larry Johnson.
One of the things I want us to look at the reality. Look at around us. People on the corners. People have shopping carts. People are putting tents along the highways because we don't have enough housing. That's the reality of the situation. We have to count on our humanity to let people know people don't want to live on the streets. They want a place to live. I got families that stay in extended stay hotels, first and second generations. They need to have the opportunity to have a place, a peaceful place to live in. Over 3,000 students in our DeKalb County schools are homeless. You can see the buses in the morning coming from the extended stay hotel. Those children need to have a better place to live. It helps with their learning. It helps with their mental health capacity. We need to make sure we're proactive in working with not only a public-private partnership, but with our school system. And so I'm the CEO who's going to get it done because I know how to connect the dots. And my workforce housing ordinance will be the impetus and the catalyst for starting those dialogues and those conversations.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Let me say that, as CEO or even as a commissioner, I'm not here to upsell changes in increased density and height minimums and such. I think that the fact is that we must maintain the integrity of our communities. People that live in communities, if they're in residential communities, most of those areas are clearly defined as such. How you increase zoning, you have to create a zoning that is specific to the character. Recently, we passed a cottage ordinance, and I would like to see that expanded to include container homes. And through expanded and different forms of housing, we have to be specific as where we place it as not to interfere with the integrity of existing communities. So from that standpoint, I will work with our zoning department so that we create appropriate communities that have greater density, and those communities are reflected accordingly in our zoning.
Thank you. All right, so now we're going to move on to the subject of character. The Board of Commissioners can sometimes end up in the news for clashing. What have you done as a commissioner to reduce friction and get things done? Let's start with Commissioner Larry Johnson.
I think one of the things you have to do is just communicate. You're never going to get rid of disagreements, but it's okay to be disagreeable without falling out or making a difference. And I think the board this past year and the years before, we were able to have disagreements, but we did a lot to get the citizens information or work done for them. And so you'll never totally get rid of clashes because people are passionate about what they do and how they do it. But as the CEO, my job is to help bring people together. And our work was first focusing on communication, making sure our department heads are giving the information to our not only our commissioners, but also the citizens, and making sure that we're responding to all the requests that are needed to make sure we have the proper delivery system. I think that cuts down on a lot of clashes because you want to communicate and over communicate. As the leader, everything starts with you. And so you want to make sure that you're providing a collaborative approach and bringing people together in partnership as much as you can.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Lorraine Johnson Cochran.
Yes, I will say that, when you have 7 different individuals, and that's commissioners, and that doesn't include the CEO as the chief executive, you will often get 7 different opinions. However, when it comes to clashing, I have found that sometimes I believe that I have colleagues that may have been unreasonable, or shall I say, over passionate, because in certain areas, science will dictate the method of transit, the mode of transit, if we move forward and as we do with high capacity transit, because ridership determines it, as well as cost factors. So as it relates to reducing friction, I can say that what I've done is never use my vote as a weapon of mass destruction. I have never required any one of my colleagues to come to me and seek support for something that was clearly right. You have my support. However, I can say that I have seen block voting that was used intentionally by some inappropriately.
Thank you. And Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
So with the governing authority, you have 8 individuals with 8 different ways of operating. We're not always going to see the world the same way at the same time, but that's no reason not to be respectful with each other. A Tuesday morning county commission meeting should not be a drama show. Now, I've never seen and never used my platform and that dais as an opportunity to preen before the cameras and blather on incessantly about whatever issue is before us. If I have an issue with a colleague that we're at odds over on a specific item on the agenda, I try to get that worked out beforehand. I've done that on our zoning issues with all of my colleagues who are here on this call this evening, and my other colleagues where our zoning issues cross-sect, and we've been able to work it out. But as a general proposition, my basic philosophy is just shut up and vote.
All righty. Thank you for that answer. And now we're going to move on to another question. How will you make DeKalb County government a great place to work? Let's start with Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Let me say I'll begin first by setting the example. Organizations have cultures, and I was always taught that leadership starts at the same place a fish rots, and that's from the head. So as the head, I will create good policy. I will ensure that those around me understand their job roles and responsibilities. I will provide them with the technology they need to do an adequate job to meet the needs of the people that they serve. I will always ensure that DeKalb County is a great place to work because I will be proactive in setting the lead for what I expect from my people and those who are with me. And also, I think it's really important that the CEO have a presence in all departments. We need to understand the needs of our people. I take a very hands-on approach to leadership, and I look forward to doing so as your CEO of DeKalb County.
Thank you. Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Yes, one, I will lead by example. Two, I will hire the right people. Three, I will provide them with the proper training and resources they need to do their jobs. Four, I will reward good performance. And five, I will promptly address poor performance. In my opinion, public service is noble, and public service should be a calling. That is the culture that I will create as CEO, and that will attract like-minded people to serve in a Steve Bradshaw administration.
Thank you. And Commissioner Larry Johnson.
I will start out with what's happening right now around voting. Our poll workers, our election department, is one of the most highly stressed departments at this moment. And it happened over the last 2 or 3 years. I will focus a lot on mental health and wellness and checking in with our employees to make sure that they have the proper assistance to make sure they can get through the nuances of every day because they're mentally not at a good point. It's hard to work and direct resources and to deliver good services. So I would lead by example to make sure I check in on our employees, to make sure I check in, to make sure that we're doing all that we can to support them in a supportive environment. I'll make sure that we have walks regularly around, you have a drink more water campaign. I will make sure that we have volunteer events to make sure that they're showing love and connecting with our community. We did a police meetups in the community where I brought the police out to do a roll call in the neighborhoods. The residents came out and brought just food, water, and connected with their police department. You know, this made our police officers feel good in stressful situations.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to our final question before we move to audience questions. At the end of your tenure as CEO, what do you want the citizens of DeKalb to say about your governing style and impact? Let's start with Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
With regard to style, I want people to say two basic things. Number one, Steve Bradshaw was accessible. Number two, Steve Bradshaw gave it to me straight, even if I didn't always want to hear what he had to say. If people say those two things about me stylistically, I think we will have achieved a good objective. With regard to impact, I would want people to say that Steve Bradshaw underpromised and over-delivered. I was successful in corporate sales because I underpromised and over-delivered. It's easy to sit in a forum, sit in a town hall meeting, and make grand pronouncements and promises. What's hard to do is to deliver. So it's important for me as a leader, the CEO of this county, to manage people's expectations properly and to underpromise and overdeliver.
Thank you, Commissioner Larry Johnson.
I want the people to see what I've done already and what I'll continue to do as your CEO. Brought an intergenerational center to our community, the first one in the state of Georgia. Walking track, basketball, differently able folks can go there and work out and do things with our seniors. New libraries. We put on Candler Road with $25 million senior housing next to a senior center, a whole campus. Build a performing arts center, increase sidewalks in our community. I want them to see CEO Larry Johnson, who served the underserved and connected the unconnected, to make sure that he cares. He treated people like they want to be treated. And he also did the work in excellence. So when you see this CEO, when he leave office, it's all about the legacy of service to the people in our community. I love DeKalb. My family was here. We set a great foundation. I want to give something back. And the way you give back is to make sure that you show results that you can see and work with our education system, with our young people, teaching them life skills and civic engagement. They're not at risk, they're at promise. And that's the type of CEO that you will get from me.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Yes, at the end of my tenure as CEO, I would like to be known as an individual who delivered. I want to be known as the woman who revived South DeKalb and who put DeKalb County progressively on the right track. I've already done these things as it relates to moving us forward, understanding the issues that we have in housing. I brought hope to DeKalb in September 2019 when we cut the ribbon on the first Operation Hope Stonecrest. Since that time, we have issued 91 home loans, and we have spent over $22 million in first-time home loans as well as down payment assistance. I'm also the person who developed our Embark Youth Farm. This is a place where children can learn entrepreneurship, they connect with nature, and they have the ability to receive an income. I am solution oriented and I will deliver as your CEO.
Thank you. All right, so now I'm going to turn to audience questions. There are quite a few questions about water billing. And one of them is, if elected, what are your plans for resolving all the water bill issues in the county? How would you provide assistance for residents that have limited resource, particularly for residents with extremely high past due bills? Let's start with Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
As the chair of Public Works and Infrastructure, at the time I qualified, there were slightly under 600 remaining water bills that were in dispute. Now, this is down from, at one point, well over 10,000 water bills. By and large, we have, and I will continue to work with individuals who have outstanding water bills. In order to bring those water bills in line, we actually offered a program, DeKalb Cares, that allowed us to utilize CARES Act funds to remediate the balances that we saw. So as your commissioner and now as your CEO, I'm not here to be heavy-handed with individuals, but everyone has a responsibility to meet obligations. We've also remediated over 100,000 faulty water meters here in DeKalb County. And as a result, we have adjusted balances. But I think it's time we bring the whole water debacle to a close. So I promise.
Thank you. Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Yes, so since taking office 7 years ago, the problem back then was massive. It was a massive problem. We heard about it all the time. Since that time, I give great credit to the administration led by CEO Thurman to attack this issue head on, to work through the issues, to get a handle on the problem. Now, that's small comfort to folks who are still getting water bills that are out of whack. And it's up to us as a government to make sure that the resolution processes are in place, that the customer service process are in place, that the bills we're sending out to people are indeed accurate. And if people have an issue with paying their bills, we offer them alternatives and support to help get that done. But if the money is owed, then we should be about the business of collecting it.
And Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, sir. Back in 2016, when we found out that the water meters were faulty, that's when we started the process of finding a way to sue this company who had put these water meters in and to bring us to where we are currently and where our CEO, Michael Thurman, has gotten those water meters implemented. So it was very proactive back then. And now you see the results of moving us forward. I was part of the ones who agreed with the Nehemiah project, and then we moved to Urban League to make sure we have funding available for people who could not pay their utilities. And I will continue to be an advocate because our seniors suffer the most around being able to pay, whether they pay a bill or get their medicine or get their groceries, and they should not have to choose. And I'll be that commissioner who have a heart and who understands that. But we put them on a payment plan. The ones who can do it, you won't get your water cut off, because water is something that you need and that you have to have in order to sustain life. And so as a health person, I understand the process and will understand and look at it from a human development standpoint, not an economic development standpoint.
Thank you. Another audience question: what will you do as CEO to protect current residents from being displaced by housing management companies that are taking advantage of vulnerable residents and lessen the ability of foreign and out-of-state investors to purchase citizens outbid citizens for home ownership? Let's start with Commissioner Bradshaw.
So we will use the power of our office and our legal department to sue the folks who are taking advantage of our seniors, trying to displace them, these poor management companies. Now, a private sector company is a private sector company, but we do have the means of litigation at our disposal, because our job should be about the business of protecting the most vulnerable in DeKalb County. With regard to foreign entities purchasing properties, candidly, that's a slippery slope. That is a very slippery slope. If we start limiting the access of people based on some external feature like their ethnicity, I think we go down a very, very dark path that could lead in all sorts of unpleasant places. Having said that, I think the state of Georgia and our General Assembly should look at doing things to mitigate that, but we should be very, very careful about how far we go down that road in limiting who can buy what.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Yes, early on, a couple of years ago, I led the effort to sue these banks who were doing predatory lending in our community. And we won some of the lawsuits. We didn't win one with one of the bigger banks, but we have that funding. We finally settled, I think, a year or two ago to use that money to come back into our community to focus on economic development. I will not tolerate our citizens being taken advantage of. I will work with organizations like NACA, the National Association Coalition of America. They're a very strong advocacy group. I was a NACA recipient a long time ago, 1994. They helped a young family like myself to buy our first home. And so they provide counseling, they help you fight in court. And I will use public-private partnerships like that to make sure we have advocates to make things happen. I had families that was kicked out of their apartments, and I made sure I work with Atlanta Legal Aid. I will add more funding to Atlanta Legal Aid because our families need to have the proper resources to go up against these big guys or companies to fight.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Yeah, let me just cut to it, because when it comes to the sale of properties, 51% of properties sold south of Memorial Drive that are zoned R100, meaning residential properties, have not been sold to single families or individuals. They've been sold to LLCs, Wall Streets, and private investors. And here in DeKalb County, currently, we do not have a rental registry. And that is one of the tools that similar areas have used to already been where DeKalb County is in terms of the influx of the buy for rent market that adversely affects not only our seniors, but individuals who seek to purchase their first home. It is absolutely imperative that we get a hold on it, because using current homestead exemptions, some of our communities, it is believed, have up to 30% of homes that are owned by for rent companies. So, as your CEO, I will fight for a rental registry. I'll seek to repeal Code 367430.
All right, thank you. Next question from the audience is, how do you plan to work with the new school superintendent, the DeKalb school system, and businesses to improve the education of our students and the lives of our teachers and create student readiness for jobs after graduation? Let's start with Commissioner Larry Johnson.
First of all, we got to understand parents are the first teachers. No system, no government can replace the parents as the foundation for how you learn and what you need to do. So first and foremost, I will start there to make sure our parents are connected as much as they can to the education, as well as how do we make sure that they are connected civically in our community. So I'll work with the schools, with their resource centers. I'll connect them with our Parks and Rec department. As your CEO, I'll be the chief recruiting officer to making sure that we have our young people through my WIN program, Workforce Innovation Next Generation, to connect our young people to the vocational jobs. We got some of the best universities and colleges in DeKalb. Nowhere in the world we should be lacking in terms of training our young people. And so I will bring all those entities together from pre-K all the way to high school to our colleges to making sure that our kids are ready, but also you got to make sure the parents are ready as well. So it'll be a collaborative effort and working on all fronts.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Yes, let me say that when it comes to education, I've served as the PTA president of 3 schools. I am a mother and a huge advocate for public education. I've also invested over $500,000 of my discretionary funds into education because I understand that you cannot separate education from government. Education affects economic development, it affects quality of life, and it affects your property values. So, I would, and let me say, I've already invested $250,000 for a violence prevention program that will start this fall because our school needs wraparound services. And truth of the matter is, reading, writing, and arithmetic, if that's all you're teaching, you're not educating young people these days. We have to teach them conflict resolution, soft skills, civic responsibility. And beyond that, we have to promote higher education and opportunities for trade. There are 18 different trades available in the state of Georgia free of charge, and we are not promoting them. And you can expect me to do it as your CEO.
Thank you. Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Yes, there should be greater partnership and collaboration between the school system and DeKalb County's government. CEO of DeKalb County and the school superintendent should be very close. I've already started that process of relationship building with Dr. Horton when I sat down and had a one-on-one meeting with him last fall and shared what my intent was on that front, which he is in agreement with. As presiding officer of the board, I held joint board of commissioners, because it's important for us, one, to work collaboratively together and get to know each other better, and 2, show the community that we're all working collaboratively together. While our district lines between school board, board of commissioners are, drawn a little bit differently, at the end of the day, we represent the same people. And I'd also make sure as CEO, I appoint one school board representative to the Decide DeKalb Development Authority Board, because economic development, one of the cores, is the state of the school system.
Thank you. Another question from our audience. There's a lot of questions about economic development in South DeKalb. Someone mentioned that it's been absent in creating any valuable increased business presence that create jobs. As CEO, what would you do in focusing on South DeKalb and building upon South DeKalb's economic infrastructure, particularly unincorporated DeKalb? Let's start with Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson.
Yes, let me say that I understand that we will not see the change we desire in South DeKalb until we address, in particular, Candler Road and South DeKalb Mall. Currently, South DeKalb has no economic core. So all of our dollars go outside our community. Last year, I actually funded a revitalization site-specific plan for South DeKalb Mall, and I retained Ryan Gravel, who is the gentleman who is the developer of the Atlanta Beltline. A month ago, I sat with the mall owners as well as 9 Metro Atlanta developers. Currently, they have narrowed down the list to 3. What we propose is the development of a mixed use facility. It will include shopping and retail, but it also includes open space as well as housing of mixed varieties, both workforce as well as marketplace.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. Commissioner Steve Bradshaw, same question.
One, I would reorient Side DeKalb to focus on South DeKalb. Here to date, they've been focused on North DeKalb. 2, I would apply 2 points of leverage that I have to induce this happening. One would be the annual allocation that DeKalb makes to Side DeKalb, which I would take from its current $1.75 million a year to $3 million a year. So they have the economic wherewithal so they don't have to chase the low-hanging fruit in North DeKalb. Second piece of that puzzle is my board appointments. CEO makes the appointments to the Side DeKalb board. Anybody seeking an appointment to the Side DeKalb board sitting across from me is going to have to convince me that their orientation will be on South DeKalb. Next, we need to identify a catalytic development and focus on that. The most likely candidate is South DeKalb Mall. We need to focus on that. And then last, as CEO, I will be the chief sales officer of DeKalb County, meaning not just as cheerleader, but somebody who has a corporate sales and business development background who will be an integral player in putting such deals together.
Thank you. And Commissioner Larry Johnson.
One of the things I want us to always remember that revitalization never stops. I mean, you have to make sure we have on Candler Road, Medcora's a $15 million new health center, $25 million senior center, new library, a new senior center, new housing in our area. We got sidewalks we put down there. Government is good at putting in the infrastructure. And then you use that to recruit businesses. The mall concept is gone. South DeKalb Mall has 3 owners. If you go and look at the mall now, it's very dilapidated. And so you got to make sure that you move forward and do some great things and make things happen. We're now in the process. I work with Marta to put a transportation center down there that's going to help with traffic and make sure we have shops in our community. But the best way to move Candler Road forward is to invest in small businesses. We can't wait on businesses from the outside, a Zoe Kitchen and all those things. We have thriving businesses already over there. We need to enhance what we have and build on that. So I'll be the chief recruitment officer as the CEO. I will go out there and recruit businesses that we need in our community.
Thank you. And now we will move on to closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds. Let's start again with Commissioner Larry Johnson.
Hello, DeKalb Dems. Thank you for Larry Lowe. You did good, my namesake. Leona, you did great with the timekeeping. I just want you to know, Dems, I've been working with you from day one. We've helped to get Democrats elected up and down the ballot. Larry Johnson is just not here, just asking for your vote. I have proven to get Democrats elected. I have the support of Mayor Andre Dickens, Mayor Franklin, half of the DeKalb Senate delegation, half of the DeKalb State Representative, even John Jackson, the former chair, because he's seen the work that we did when we had to deal with the voter issues we had, and we made a smooth process happen in DeKalb because Larry Johnson was at the helm. Imagine me as your CEO. I'm going to connect the unconnected, serve the underserved through housing, through public safety, to making sure that our public health systems are moving forward, that our jails are not the place for people with mental health and substance abuse, that we have a place for them to go. Economic development. We're going to win. Workforce innovation and next generation. Work with our young people to get them into the jobs of the future to make things happen. And we can do that together. So Dems, I ask for your vote and your support. Right now, it's early voting for May 21st, but you cannot get elected by not being a part of leaders who understand that you've been working and show results that you can see. LJ all the way, LJ all the way. I need your support because you've seen what I've done already. And that's what I'm going to do for you in the future. You're going to have a CEO who works hard every day to make sure that we are moving forward as Democrats.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Larry Johnson. And now let's go to Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson.
Yes, thank you to the DeKalb County Democrats for hosting us this evening. This has been top notch. I could say a whole lot more, but your time constraints keep me concise. Let me say to everyone that, the CEO position is important, and DeKalb County is clearly at a crossroad. The issues that we face now around transportation, housing, and economic development, they will define who we are. For many years, we've had a lack of capital improvements that have hurt us. Our infrastructure has not always been in place for the expansion of South and unincorporated DeKalb, because we are currently under a consent decree that requires us to expand, replace, and enlarge our infrastructure. Serving as CEO is not a popularity contest. It is about capacity. It is about the individual who has the ability to move us progressively forward. I have worked hard and I have delivered for you as your commissioner. As your CEO, I will do nothing less. It is time we put people in position who have the ability to deliver. I have extensive relationships and I have the care and conviction to do the job. We must begin with a complete remediation by instituting service level agreements as well as standard operating procedures. So vote Lorraine for change right
Thank you.
now.
Thank you, Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson. And finally, Commissioner Steve Bradshaw.
Thanks to the DeKalb Dems for hosting us, for putting on a great and informative forum. Thank you to my colleagues for joining me again for this exercise. My name is Steve Bradshaw and I'm running for CEO. And I'll end where I begin by telling you why I'm running. I'm running because I love DeKalb County. My wife and I made a conscious decision to move here 30 years ago to plant our flag because we were attracted by the things that this county has to offer. And now we sit at a crossroads where we have to decide who we're going to be going forward. What you need in the next CEO is somebody who has the experience, temperament, judgment, and humility to lead us forward to the next level. And I emphasize the word humility as a leadership quality because I've lived long enough to know, experienced enough to know that all of the answers for all of our challenges do not reside in the body and mind of Steve Bradshaw. I'm a humble enough man to know that. So I'm going to surround myself with people imbued with a customer service mentality and a public servant's heart so that we can go about the business of tackling the challenges that remain in front of us. Our best days are in front of us, without question. Therefore, I'm humbly asking for your vote, and I'm asking you to believe in Steve because I believe in you.
Thank you, Commissioner Steve Bradshaw. And now I'm going to turn it back over to our chair, Brandy White.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Larry.
Thank
And
you.
thank each of our candidates for being here with us this evening. This has been a fantastic forum, quite impressive, I might add. Thank you also to Larry Lowe, our third vice chair, for moderating tonight's debate. And lastly, thank you to each of you who are with us here this evening. If you would like to request an appointment to meet with our current CEO, Michael L. Thurman, our team has actually listed the link in the chat. In addition to that, if you'd like to reach out to any of our candidates here this evening, their emails are also shown in the chat as well. As we close tonight, our DeKalb County Democratic Committee has held forums for all of our May 21st primary and general elections, from school board to state court judges, commissioners, and now our CEO forum. And it's important to know that early voting is already upon us. I urge everyone to get out and vote early. Our team has added a link to early voting locations in the chat as well. Again, thank you for being here with us this evening. Thank you to Commissioners Lorraine Cochran Johnson, Larry Johnson, and Steve Bradshaw for being here with us this evening. I am going to pass it back over to our Chair of Special Events, Steve Parker, to close us out.
Thanks, Brandy, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. It was very positive information. It helped me in my decision-making. Thank you, Larry Lowe, for moderating tonight and for his research that created the questions. Technical crew, Dr. Bola Tillman, Jeffrey Burdett, Jessica Parker, Paula Anderson, Leona Perry, and the Special Events Committee for planning these forums. Others who helped behind the scenes in producing forums were Amy Farrow, Gareth Lacorneau, Denise Peterson, Karen Davenport, and Christina Dobbs. And a very special thanks to our skilled moderators in the previous debates, Amaryllis Alexander, Cindy Wilski, and Carolyn Alman, and Larry Lowe tonight. Great job, Larry. It's very important to vote, as Brandy has said. Use what you've learned here. You can visit DeKalbDems.com, click on the Make a Plan to Vote page, and you'll get access to the forums and other information about all the May 21st election details. Doing the work to get out the vote is very serious business. We have to use resources to knock on doors, pass out information at various events, set up tables at festivals, march in parades, present forums and debates like you've seen here tonight. And we have to pay vendors to print materials like flyers and yard signs. It all adds up. That's why we're having a fundraising event on the evening of Saturday, June 22nd at the Emory Conference Center Hotel. We're very happy to announce tonight that Senator John Ossoff will be our keynote speaker. We will also be presenting our Leadership Legacy Award to Senator Gloria Butler and CEO Michael Thurman. We need you here. Tickets are on sale starting at $100. We also have sponsorships available from $500 to $5,000 that include a VIP reception and other benefits. It's critical that we win Democrat seats here in DeKalb. It was DeKalb County that was responsible for flipping the state blue in 2020. We did that, and it takes some money. We need your support, and we want you to come to our event on Saturday, June 22nd. It's an affordable event that will truly make a difference for the better. We hope to see you there. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and thanks to the audience for submitting so many good questions. We couldn't get to all of them, but please reach out to them directly and ask those questions. It was a pleasure for us to bring important voter information like this to you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Visit DeKalbDems.com to learn more about what we do, and we wish you a great evening. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.